Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Today, we are unpacking an absolutely monumental shift in British politics. Andy Burnham has arrived at number 10, and honestly, it's not just a simple change in leadership. It is a dramatic, total pivot in how the government actually operates. We're going to break down his very first unscripted moments in office, his sweeping new policies, and of course, the highly scrutinized team he's trusted to actually pull all of this off.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, a new prime minister. 2, the unscripted circuit breaker. 3, immediate and long-term pledges. 4, the new cabinet. And we'll wrap up with 5, cabinet conflicts and challenges.
Starting right off with Section 1, a new prime minister. We'll look at his arrival and the historical context. Now, when Burnham arrived at Downing Street, the scene was incredibly charged. Yet helicopters overhead, massive applause, and this deeply emotional embrace with his mother, Eileen, and his wife, Mary. But the second he walked through that famous black door, that personal moment pretty much evaporated into a staggering political reality. 7. Andy Burnham is the 7th prime minister since 2016. That single digit is literally the most vital context for his entire premiership. He is inheriting a fractured, revolving door of a government. To put that into perspective, just take a look at this timeline. 10 years ago marked the start of a seriously turbulent decade. Then 4 years ago, that turbulence accelerated into this chaotic turnover cycle. Fast forward to today, and Burnham is the 5th prime minister in just 4 years. Imagine having 5 different bosses in 4 years. That is exactly why Burnham so bluntly stated that his generation of politicians must raise our game to regain any sort of global stability. Business as usual? Yeah, it's just no longer an option.
Moving right along to Section 2, the unscripted circuit breaker. Let's look at this totally different style of leadership.
Right out of the gate, Burnham signaled a deliberate shift, and this brilliantly illustrates it. On the left is what we are so used to seeing, right? A stiff prime minister standing behind a lectern, reading from pre-written notes. But on the right, that's Burnham's actual approach. No lectern. Totally unscripted. He was speaking expansively and directly into the cameras over all that background noise. It was a very calculated visual choice to project total transparency to a pretty disillusioned public. And during this address, he didn't take a victory lap. Instead, he made this incredibly stark admission. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better. He basically chose to validate the anger of voters who feel let down, essentially telling the public point blank, I hear you. But he took it a step further, calling his arrival a hard reset. Quote, we will make this moment a circuit breaker for Britain. So he isn't just tweaking a few policies here and there. He is explicitly promising to undo what he calls 40 years of wrong turns. So what exactly are those wrong turns? Well, according to Burnham, the 1980s kicked off a period where political power was hoarded and centralized in Westminster. Economic power was heavily privatized, and huge chunks of the country were deindustrialized, which he says led to lasting decline. His proposed fix? Take that power directly out of Westminster and carry it into every single local postcode. For the average citizen, this represents a promise to bring life's essentials back under public control and to jumpstart reindustrialization. Which brings us to Section 3, immediate and long-term pledges. Let's look at the policy roadmap. Let's move to and see how this builds into concrete action. He's basically split his agenda into 2 completely different speeds. On the immediate front, we have day 1 promises like ending rough sleeping today and setting out cost of living help tomorrow. But contrasting those really quick fixes is a massive overarching promise for later this year, a comprehensive 10-year plan designed to lock in long-term national stability. Alongside that timeline, he rattled off a rapid-fire list of pledges. We're talking building more council homes to drive down welfare costs, revamping the education system to get young people into work, and providing way more mental health support. All of this while promising to strictly meet fiscal rules and honor international defense commitments. The absolute key takeaway concept here? He wants to build a preventative state, basically a government that invests upfront in success rather than constantly paying later for failure. All right, Section 4, the new cabinet, unpicking 40 years of decisions.
Now, to unpick 4 decades of decisions, you obviously need a very serious team. Burnham has built a new top tier to run the engine room of government. But, and this is a big but, while this specific group was super united in their goal to oust the previous leadership, they are walking into their new roles carrying some pretty significant political baggage and competing ideologies.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, Cabinet's conflicts and challenges. Let's look at the potential pitfalls. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer amount of friction built right into this top tier. Let's methodically walk through this completely impartially. John Healey is a surprise choice for chancellor, especially since he previously left a financial black hole at the Ministry of Defense. Then you've got Ed Miliband taking over as foreign secretary, a role that brings some heavy international baggage. Shabana Mahmood is keeping her job as home secretary, but she's pushing tough immigration reforms that many in her own party desperately want scrapped. Louise High is stepping up as first Secretary of State, basically operating the government's engine room, but without a great deal of experience. Yvette Cooper takes health, which is widely seen as a downward move to a very complex brief she doesn't know. And finally, Pat McFadden kept his previous role. He's a reformer, but his views could directly clash with Burnham over taking benefits away from claimants. Let's zoom in specifically on Ed Miliband for a second, because this choice could have massive international ramifications. He has a very documented history of stopping the U.S. from using the Diogo Garcia military base. Plus, he's argued against allowing allies to bomb Iran from UK bases. When you combine those things with his fierce stances on climate change and drilling, he is on a direct ideological collision course with the incoming Trump administration in the U.S. But, the friction isn't just international. It's actually coming from right inside his own party lines. Shabana Mahmood keeping her job pretty much guarantees intense ongoing party division over those immigration reforms. And then Pat McFadden's desire to reform benefits, that fundamentally clashes with Burnham's historical reluctance to take benefits away from claimants. So the new PM and his key ministers could honestly be entirely out of sync on day one. Ultimately, removing Keir Starmer was a glue that held this whole coalition together in the first place. But now that they actually hold the levers of power, we have to ask a pretty provocative question. Can a shared 10-year vision truly overcome this deep history of internal friction? Will this new cabinet actually inspire loyalty, or will their ideological differences derail the new government before it even gets off the ground? We will absolutely have to wait and see. Thanks for joining us for this explainer. Keep your eyes on how these early days unfold.